like it didn't do for me. Tell you something always happens with technology. It's super complex, super hard. I don't even know. If you guys are like somebody out there is a techie, wants to help me, that would be great. I would greatly appreciate that. I'm gonna have to get off my Podbean, come back in. Oh, I tell you, it's just the best. Let's see here. Live, manage, again. Sorry guys about that. Hang in with me. I'm trying to get my live video back. See if I can. If not, I'll have to restart again. What is today? The 3rd, the 4th, the 4th. Okay. Let's take a look and see. So I have been doing a lot of research and around the there we go live. Let's see if this works. Okay, trying to go live again and see. There we go. Hey Mal, how are you? I don't know if you're still on here. The voice went out, so I had to readjust and redo things. Okay, so we got it all going. Hey Felix, how are you? So I have been doing some amazing readings and research, and of course I'm in this wonderful master's program. Again, it's consciousness and transformative studies, and the consciousness and transformative studies it's pretty awesome because again we talk about consciousness and then we talk about transformation. And so what I love about this program is that it's an experiential program. So it's practical, right? It's not just scientific. It's not just looking at articles and reporting out and using your brain and then, going out there and researching and looking at things through a microscope. It's really subjective and objective, right? And then it's sort of looking at yourself and how you fit into the world. And so it's just it is quite amazing. And so one of the practices that we've been doing a lot of practices, and I think really creating a robust sort of dynamic for even my coaching that I do with individuals, and really digging deep into who we are, how we engage the world, and how we can move forward, right? So instead of being just stuck, right, in this, like what's happening in the world right now, the crazy, all this and that we have this opportunity to sort of create our world. And that's pretty exciting. And so one of the things that we're doing, so I had a couple of classes last night. One of them was consciousness of sleep and dreams. And they're asking us to keep a dream log. Well, I've never done this. And here's the deal. I don't know if you guys dream or you guys are dreamers out there. And I don't mean just like when you fall asleep, go to dream. But, maybe you have a meditation, maybe you have visions, maybe whatever it is for you. I have these things and I never write them down. I dream every night. I remember my dream every single day since I was a child. I've never skipped a day. And they're so vivid. There's so much happening. I think I'm doing more work in my dreams than I do in the real world. It's like jumping from place to place to place to place and all these dialogues and everything. It's like I lived a whole lifetime, in one dream every single night. So that would be a whole bunch of lifetimes that I've lived, right? In my dream world. And so starting to journal my dreams, which is weird. Okay, so for those of you out here, for those on Facebook, if you want to leave your comments, then after I can go back and look at them. But good morning to you if you're on Facebook. And to look at, what are the dreams that we're having? What is the experience behind them? And are they nightmares? Are they terrors? We were talking about sleep paralysis yesterday, and some people have sleep paralysis, which is not fun. And how do you maneuver through that? Or how do you allow yourself to have some kind of a pleasant, engagement with dreams? When I was young, I had nightmares, right? And I didn't like it. I hated going to sleep because I was afraid that I was going to have these nightmares. And I did every night. Um, anyway, I overcame the nightmares. And since then, don't really have a whole lot of nightmares. Sometimes I'll have these dreams where it feels like I'm out of control, because I typically feel like I'm in control, but it's like, it's almost like you lose your breath, right? It's almost like a death and a rebirth. So it's interesting. But the dreams, so to log the dream, and it was kind of funny because I remember my dreams, but writing this morning, it was weird because I started to remember more of my dream, and more kept popping up and more kept popping up. And I'm like, oh my God, if I have to write my dreams every day, I'll spend all day writing my dreams because there's so much that happens. I just can't, I wouldn't have the time to write it all. And so sort of trying to explain or describe the details of the dream, it was pretty interesting, right? It was like kind of not easy to sort of articulate, maybe describe the setting or what it felt like, but an interesting practice is what I'm saying. And so I would highly recommend that perhaps you guys try to do that and see what happens, see if something opens up for you. It's kind of a new thing for me, and I'm kind of excited about it, to be quite honest, because again, I've never really engaged with my dreams in that particular way. I've never written them down. I've always just said, okay, yeah, I dreamt this. I remember what I dreamt. I remember all this stuff, but then I'm just like, eh. And I've always been very interested in what my brain activity would look like in my dreams, right? I've always wanted to do some of these. Good morning, Ines Landman. To look at, the brain and what would be going on in the brain, right? As far as, what does the waves look like, or how much time I am in REM, and literally I have, there's things that they say about dreams I don't believe. They say, oh, it takes you this much time to actually start dreaming, and that's not true. I've literally closed my eyes into a dream instantaneously. So just interested in that, and why my brain may work different from other people's, or if that's just a lie and that you can just go directly into a dream, and can you recall dreams or go into another dream. So kind of doing the dream world and the consciousness piece is really exciting for me. It is part of esoteric practices, and alchemy, of course, because alchemy we don't dismiss anything. We take everything in, and we transform it into something beautiful. So I'm really excited to see what there's available. So if you have dreams, please share. I think that would be a really cool sort of, just for Podbean listeners, that a call in. I know I keep saying I'm going to do a call in, but God, I'm busy. You know what I mean? It's like my life is packed with stuff. Another practice, and I think I want to talk about practices today and how critical they are for us, because practices are the things that set us up for to win, to succeed. Practices are what we utilize to kind of edge us forward into our goals and the bigger ideas in our life and what we want to create. So practices help us, and they help us to stay on track. They help us to stay clear. They also kind of untangle this feeling of overwhelm that we get sometimes when we have too much on our plate. We can go to our practices to sort of help us out or maneuver through. That's another thing that we do in spiritual alchemy. We have practices to sort of sway us through or move us through these uncomfortable, difficult times. So think about the practices that you're using in your life. What practices are you using? Are they working for you? Are they helping you? Or do you need to switch and change up the practices that you have in your life? Okay, so practices that I'm into right now, and Kung Fu is one. And so I just started taking on Kung Fu. I'll tell you that it's quite amazing. And it's amazing how everything is interconnected. And so we're sort of coming into the idea that everything is interconnected, that there's not this separation that we think there is, that somehow everything is interwoven into a web. You could think of it as like the spider web, right? And in some indigenous cultures, I said this yesterday, like the Great Mother was a spider who webbed, created this big web and interlocking of things, right? And you hear like the World Wide Web, when we have the internet, which is a web, that life itself is this web. It's like there's this, maybe this invisible kind of string that connects you and me together, right? Even through social media, like I can't touch you, but we're here together with each other, right? We're here together. And as we're here together, there's this like invisible kind of like energy that's connecting us, right? It's like, how is it really happening? We need to think of it that way. Like, if we thought about time, place, space, and we thought about how the internet is connecting us, what is really connecting us? What is the thread that is allowing me here and you there to be interconnected? There's this sort of like thing that's happening that we don't even understand, right? We can try to describe it. We can say that there's these particles and whatever that allows us to connect from here to there, but the reality is that we really can't see everything that's going on that's interconnecting us in this particular way. So it's just the vastness of that interconnection, right? That we recognize that we're all connected. And in that interconnection, we're able to create, right, sort of these practices that help us to interweave our own kind of web, right? The way that we want to design it. Again, there's all sorts of ways to look at this. I think I've described it in, several different ways, because different people have different visuals. And I think a good visual for this is the web, right? To think about the web. So if I'm edging towards this, what's the practice in that particular web that I want to sort of like maneuver towards? That interconnection to, I don't know, maybe it's doing pottery or sewing, or I don't know what it is, whatever you guys are up to. Maybe you want to travel the world, or you're remodeling your house, or you're want to buy a house, or you're wanting to get rid of your house, or you want to get married, or you are married, or you want to get divorced, or there's all these different scenarios that are happening, right? And it's like understanding the impact of the web and how we co-create in the practices, right? A practice, for instance, and how this is all interconnected, right? A practice, for instance, would be like, I want a husband, I want to get married, right? Or a wife. There's steps and practices that need to be taken on in order for that to kind of manifest into your life. And so that interconnection, how do I develop that? How do I sort of weave the web to create the space for that to exist, right? If there's, let's just say you had a web and all this stuff is stuck in your web and there's no room to breathe or to draw in a new energy, then we sort of got to clear out the clutter of that web so that there's open space, right? And so how does this relate? Let me tell you again. So there's a guy, right, that this one of my friends, he's always posting on Facebook, and he's always posting about like, why are women this way and why are women that way? Are women, and then I'm like, it's not a black and white thing. Men and women we're more similar than we're just not alike, right? We're similar in a lot of ways, with a few differences. And asking all these things about well, what about this? And he said something that intrigued me, that I was like, I agree with that. I really like it. He was talking about having a woman in his life, a real woman, and what it would take. And he said he read some book, right? So I was like, okay, well, let's hear the book. Hi, how are you? Despacio. And the book he read was 3% Man. I need to buy the book because I want to see what these guys are reading about women and how to engage us. I'm kind of curious now. But he did say that if you want a good woman in your life, to clean your space, right? To make room for her to come in. Like if you have a dirty house, where is she going to put her stuff, right? Or if you have a dirty car, where is she supposed to sit? So I liked that because it was a lot of behaviors and habits and practices. They say it's like the visualization of, perhaps drawing into your life what you want. So you start behaving in that way. And really, that's what it is, right? Michael G, hey, how are you? Cheers. Mm. And so to clear the space and to make the space for this to sort of happen, right? It's like you're cleaning out the web. You're cleaning out the space and you're opening up an invitation for that energy to arise for you. And so I like that. I like that idea. I was like, that, well, yes, that's how it works, right? We open up the space and so that we can allow the energy to come in. It's not magical. People think it's magical, like this stuff is mystical and magical, and it seems that way. But really, what it is that we're drawing in the intention of that energy to us, right? And that's by saying, well, what are my practices? It's very simple. Looking at your practices and looking how you engage the world. Practices are critical, right? Something that literally will set you up so that you can win in life. So ask yourself, what are your practices? What do you need to throw out? There's some practices you need to throw out. They're not serving you anymore. There's some that are. And constantly shaping and molding, right? So for me, as I'm taking Kung Fu, and what I'm noticing is that there's this interconnection into my master's program, right? The interconnection of consciousness and transformation, transformative studies. We're going through shamanic practices right now and traditions, right? And in the space of that, it's looking at how do myth stories, how does the story and dialogue that we create and in our life sort of manifest out into the world, into what we create and how we create our story, right? Our storyline. So if we looked at it, we would say, well, Kung Fu has this myth that goes along with the forms that you're using. It's the same in our life. And that's what we call integrity. Is your story and your myth aligning with the practices that you're creating, right? Because it's really an expression of you. It's an expression of the outward movement of your internal world. But what does this take? Well, it takes going inside. So you have to know who you are, what your story is, and all that. So getting to know yourself, getting comfortable with who you are, understanding yourself. There's rites of passage and initiation, right? And I never used to understand this particular piece, which initiation, for me, I kept saying, well, I don't understand. When am I going to get initiated? I do all this work. I read about esoteric wisdom and alchemy, and I've been super spiritual. I've done this stuff my whole life since I was a child, and I'm like, but who's going to come and initiate me? Where's my initiation? But couldn't quite figure out, where I belong or who I belong to, right? And so on this journey, kind of like floating around, trying to figure out where my place in space was, right? Coming to realize that initiation is really the ability to dig deep within who we are, right? And that connection to God, to the creator, whatever you call it, universe, the thing that has developed into what this is, into us, and to really engage in that personal relationship. And as you develop that personal relationship and you listen to that voice of reason inside, it sort of leads you into initiation, which is interesting because no one was there to tell me what that meant. I mean, I had to figure this out. I was looking and I was like reading about it and I was like, I don't get it still. Do I have to be part of this like order of the Order of the Phoenix? No, just kidding, Harry Potter. Do I have to be, Mason, or do I have to be a this? Do I have to be a that? No, that wasn't it at all. However, we do have these tribes who did have initiation. So we have the shamans, right? We have the curanderos. We have all of these indigenous cultures that initiate rites of passage for their people, we have lost that, especially in American culture. We're so far away from that. There is no initiation, really. It's like, go get money. Pay your bills and go get cars and houses, and that's not what life's about, right? Life's about us. It could be for you if you want it to be. I'm not going to make people wrong for that, but I'm going to say that you're going to feel empty because there was no initiation of who am I, really. And really, when we initiate, we end up having different names. I have 3 different names that I call myself, and those names are very real for me. But the initiation into those different names, right? How did I come to that, right? It was a very personal relationship with the higher being, right? Or God, or whatever it is. It's my personal connection to that. No one can take that away from me. I know who I am. If somebody came to me and said this stuff, I'm like, I know who I am. I've dug deep enough to be grounded and understand. And so because of that, right, we have this opportunity to reinitiate ourselves back into our myth story. Okay? So I know sometimes it probably sounds like I'm going in circles, but there is, I promise you, there's a reason for it, because there's so much back dialogue that has to happen. We get to turn internally so that externally we can manifest the experiences we want to have. It's an internal job. I mean, you could look at every guru, every prophet, every religious head, and what do they say? It's within. Everybody says it. I'm saying it. I didn't find this stuff outside of me. It all came within. And so it's like looking in, and how do we initiate? Now, if you were lucky enough to be initiated through another culture and myth, know that you're being initiated into the storyline and the mythology and the stories of that particular, I don't want to say religion, but tribe. Could be a tribe, right? Or a community of individuals where you indoctrinate yourself into that space. Okay? So for me, right, I don't necessarily have a particular space. It's my own. I'm just kind of hanging out on my own. I don't know what that means. That means that I can create a culture and of individuals who are seeking to find their own myth story. But myth has been the dialogue that has directed our cultures into what we see today, basically. The administration of the divine law, basically. So that's why I said the other day, whose myth are you living? Are you living yours, or are you living somebody else's? Are you living somebody else's story? There's a common consensus that will come together in the dialogue and the stories, but we're at a time now where you can really tap into your own story, your own myth. What is your truth? What is your dialogue? How does it add value to the greater community and the bigger of humanity, right? And that's what Spirit and Coffee is about. It's be able to add to the dialogue, be able to support individuals, right? Have them rebirth themselves into and manifest who they are internally into the external. That's why I always say to walking your divine birthright. What does that really mean? What? Walk my divine birthright? I say it all the time. You're like, yeah, sure, I'm walking my divine birthright, but are you truly? Like, what does that look like? So going internally, okay? So again, yes, very deep conversations for morning talks. I know that. So for those of you who stay on and continue to work on yourself, kudos to you. It's not about me. I always tell people I do this work because I'm a giver. I'm here to serve humanity. Literally, I know I'm on my own mission. I know what I'm up to. So I'm here just to support people who are kind of like, well, I'm not sure what I'm up to. And so then they can have maybe some kind of an epiphany, an opening, right? An awakening into who they are and what they want to create for their life. And so, so kudos, because you show up for yourself here. You're not showing up for me, hopefully. Well, if you are, then hi, and I love you. But showing up for yourself, right? Which is the big thing. Show up for you. And I'll end with this. I had a story with my niece. I told you I was working with my niece, and I'm working with my niece's friend. And we talked about time, because time is such a beautiful thing. It's the one gift that we have that is more valuable than anything on this, in my opinion, in this whole world, right? Even food, air, whatever. The fact that we have time to actually experience this world is kind of cool. And I think we forget that, right? So we had this engagement about time and, valuing our time, really valuing the time that we have. What are we doing with our time, and really being cognizant of that? Where do we put our time? How do we spend our time? It's called spiritual currency, right? How do we spend our time? What are we paying attention to? And the spiritual currency, right? Because there's psychological time and then there's clock time. And the psychological time is the time that's the time of creativity, if we choose. It could also be the time of drama, where we create these dramas in our life. And then we stop ourselves from actually engaging in the things we want to. So there's a value there in time. And there's something beautiful to be said about that. And of course, it's all interconnected, right? Everything can circle back to everything else, right? And I think that's the way my brain works. So it's kind of hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm probably bouncing around and you're like, what's going on? I don't know, where are we headed here? And that's because everything's interconnected. So I can literally lecture for the rest of my life, because there's no one answer, right? Even in science, I don't even want to go off on that tangent. It's all theoretical, right? It's like one day something's good, the next scientifically it's bad for you, then it's good for you. We don't know. We don't know. We're just making things up. So, moral of the story: dig inside you. Find your initiation. What does that even mean for you? So that you can then start to create the practices, right? The practices in your life. So that those practices then they sort of become the foundation for the creation of your life. Your practices will help you to get where you want to go. And remember that everything is interconnected through this invisible sort of like web that's happening all over the place, right? Like right now, if we looked at the Facebook, so I'm interconnected on so many different platforms right now. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook is then going to go to YouTube, it's going to go to, I'm on Podbean's going to go to all these other things, and it just sort of webs out like this. That's sort of our life, right? There's this big interlocking and interconnection, and so we've got to clear the space so that interconnection allows us to broadcast sort of what it is that we want. What are we trying to broadcast, right? And I don't mean broadcast like on a podcast. I mean just in general in life, our energy that we're broadcasting out. So hopefully this is helpful. Look within yourself. What is your initiation? What is your myth story? Whose story are you following? Big questions, right? Huge questions to ask yourself. Are you living your story or somebody else's? And then how, right, or what, I should say, practices are you utilizing to get yourself there, okay? So hopefully this is helpful. I have a whole myth story to tell you about my life. It's a big myth. It's pretty fun. Lots of drama and and 3 names. I have 3 names, and those are solid. Those are my solid names, and that's it. If I were gifted another name, that would be great. Those are great questions, as always. Yes, you're welcome. I know, it's like, how do we remember all this stuff, right? So much. But I'm actually just glad to say that I'm in a master's program right now. It's Consciousness and Transformative Studies. And then I will go into transformative, no, I can't think of it. Psychology. It'll be in psychology, though. Not transformative psychology. Parapsychology? Oh God, now I don't even know what I'm talking about. Transparent. Anywho, you get the point. And so, so I'm excited. I have tons of books too, if you guys are interested. I've been reading tons. Obviously, I have to. As a master's program, it's like read a whole book in a day. Hurry up, go. And it's this thick. But classes that I'm taking, just so you know, 3 classes right now. I'm taking shamanic traditions, body consciousness, body wisdom, and the consciousness of sleep and dreams. Very powerful classes, okay? So there you have it. So I love you guys. Have the best day ever. And of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.